What was that? What? What's that sound? Where? It's aliens and they're living in your town. Damn. They have arrived. What? They're all around. So many aliens living in your town. Are you scared of aliens? Well,
hello, weirdos out there in Weirdo Land. It's the Weird Whatever podcast. We've got me, Jay Bird, producer Dennys. You've got producer Birdney. Beckett is late. Vicky's having horrible technical problems. It's typical Weird and Whatever. We are not in the studio. We are not in the RMF area for a billion different reasons. Unfortunately, you guys are going to have to deal with us on the Zoom again. We're going to try to make it as clear and as easy as possible. I do want to jump right into, I put something up on Facebook earlier. There's yet another biopic about Ted Bundy, the serial killer. And it begs the question, do we really need another movie or documentary or anything about Ted Bundy? It's all been said. It's all been done. And it's at a point now, we're getting to a point now where society and pop culture, they're trying to make Ted Bundy cool. And I don't think that's a good idea. Ted Bundy was a jerk off. He was the worst kind of person on the planet. We're just kind of in that position of possibly making him cooler than what he needs to be. And I'm not cool with that. Dennys, your thoughts?
I just think they got to stop casting sexy men as Ted Bundy in all these shows. Every time I see a show with him, it's always this good-looking dude. And I think that, like you said, they have another one coming out with the guy from American Horror Story, right? Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah. I'm sick of hearing how charming and how good-looking he was, and I'm sick of hearing all that shit about that guy. What they should do is do a documentary about the victims, if it's okay with the family. Tell their stories, not as a victim, but as a person. You always see their pictures. They're just a Ted Bundy victim. But if you're their family and you're their friends, that's gotta be awful. Tell their story. Birdie?
Yeah, like, it almost makes you worry too, like the whole thing with, people shooting up schools nowadays because they're maybe getting too much media attention, that this is going to romanticize like serial killers of some sort, or just murderers in general, where people are going to be like, oh, if I murder someone, look at all these documentaries and all these good looking people they're going to use to cast me. Especially if you have like nothing going for you in life, that could be a little bit something that someone wants to do. I don't know.
And I'm kind of cherry picking over here because Ted Bundy has been done so much. So you're kind of like, all right, we're over Ted Bundy. But I love murder. I love all the murder stuff. I love watching it. I get excited when it's coming out on Netflix. Some people know that, and they know they're going to get some glory doing that. And I am part of the problem, as we all are. Beckett, thoughts? Bundy, murder, serial killers, what's going on?
I think I agree, but the only thing I'll say, and I agree with Dennys, the only thing I would contribute is that, I don't know, if the guy was a good-looking guy, don't you think they have to basically cast a good-looking guy to play him? But that was kind of the problem, is that he was a good-looking, normal guy. Wouldn't you agree, Dennys?
He was 70s good-looking, 80s good-looking. He had that old school. If you look at pictures of him, in fact, any of these celebrities, even if you watch the Richie Valens movie, Lou Diamond Phillips was way better looking than Richie Valens.
But he was good looking for the time. He was good looking.
For sure.
I don't know. I think that's more of a media thing. I think the media said he was good looking and he brainwashed everybody to think he was way more charming and way more handsome than what he was.
You wonder if it's the stereotype at the time for serial killers was they're gross, they live underground, they prey on children, all these bad things. And then when you have a serial killer who isn't horrific looking or easier on the eyes, it probably blew people's minds to think a normal person was out there doing such horrific things.
True.
So you wonder if it's just the fascination with him, because he became arguably one of the most famous American serial killers.
I mean, if not the most.
Yeah.
It just, but again, I'm cherry picking over here because I loved the Night Stalker documentary. And that guy was just as horrific.
And he's horrible. Creepy.
He is creepy. That guy had shark eyes. He just didn't have any kind of soul in his eyes. But we did have that commentary on our KVJ Facebook page. I'd love to hear everyone's opinion on that. There's already a lot of great opinions on there already. So good stuff. And ask the people in the chat room today, YouTube chat room, have we had enough Ted Bundy or do we want more? And what's your opinion on all this stuff? I know we've delved into it, but they just keep on giving us these serial killer documentaries and movies and we're eating them up. But does it come with a cost, Beckett? That's always the question.
It always comes with a cost. I mean, like we discussed before, great things. Facebook, there's a lot of charities that have raised a lot of money. There's a lot of awareness gone out, a lot of people and families and friends staying connected, but there's been horrible things that come out. So, the old rule, we've been nerdy on this podcast before, there's with physics, the rule with physics is there's always an equal and opposite reaction. So with every good, and not to be Marxist and say that it's always like a net zero thing, there's always an evening out of things, as pessimistic as that might sound.
Speaking of in the vein of serial killers and murder, we got a pretty creepy email, and I want to see what y'all think and what the chat room thinks. Is this person dealing with a murderer? Dear Weird, whatever. It's the second time I've seen my neighbor burying something in his backyard after midnight. I've also seen him bring large duffel bags from his car at odd hours. The other day I saw him, he had a huge scratch on his neck, almost like someone was fighting him off. I'm beginning to expect this guy might be a murderer. He's got weird behavior. He just seems socially off. Unfortunately, my cameras can't pick up everything I see with the naked eye. For example, I see that in his backyard, he's burying something, but I can't tell what he's putting in the hole. What do you guys think? How should I handle this? Does it sound like I'm dealing with some type of murderer? Birdney, neighbor, duffel bag, holes.
I would definitely call someone, just because even though part of me is like, well, it's not my business, at the same time, I'm thinking, if this is a murderer, how many more people is this person going to murder when I could potentially stop these murders from happening by calling it out? Like do it under the rug, like address something, be like, someone's, have someone come over, the police or whatever, be like, someone saw you digging something back here. Do you mind if we check? And if it is, like, if it's nothing, then you're just going to have a pissed off neighbor. It doesn't really make a difference. But if it is a murderer, then you just saved so many more lives and solved how many mysteries.
Dennys, you don't get involved, do you?
Probably not. One time I was living in Orlando. I had a roommate and we were smoking on the porch, and we saw our neighbor putting a giant bag in the ground, and we were going to report it and everything. We were spying on him. And I guess his dog died and he was burying his dog, and we were going to report him, but it wasn't a body. He put it in a big bag and buried it. It was very sad, but thank God we didn't say anything.
Beckett, you just bury your dog. Police come to your door. Now they're questioning you for murder of a human. How badly do you feel?
It's a double loss, right? Like you're like upset about burying the dog, and then you're upset about having to deal with the cops.
That's why we didn't report him.
Sometimes you shouldn't get involved. I don't know. Chat room, did it sound like they're dealing with the murderer on their next door neighbor? I don't know if I get involved. I definitely spy and investigate, but I don't call the fuzz. What were you saying, Birdie?
I feel like if that was happening to me and I was burying my pet, I would understand. Like I would be like, I am literally burying something in a duffel bag. Like I can't get angry as my neighbor being, neighborly or whatever, protecting the other neighbors in the neighborhood. I'd be like, that's funny. But no.
I was watching a Jeffrey Dahmer documentary, and when they were, getting all the bodies out of there, the neighbors had smelled horrific smells for such a long time. But there were some people that didn't want to leave there. They lived there for a long time, and one dude wanted to stay there, and they're like, we're tearing this thing down. Could you ever, you find out something horrific happens next door? We're talking Jeffrey Dahmer level, bodies galore, cannibalism. Could you live next door to that, or would you have to move, Beckett?
Definitely moving.
You're moving?
Yeah, 100%.
Birdney?
Yeah, I just feel I'm a big person with energies, and I feel like that would just be too much negative energy that's happened in that area. And I want, like Beckett says, I don't want to poke the bear. Like maybe it's nothing, but if there is something, that's definitely the place that you should not be living.
100%.
It's one thing to have, there's a ghost in your house or a dead body was in there. It's another thing to have 17 unrested souls or just murder victim. That's horrific shit right there. Denny's final thought on this.
Yeah, I'd have to move too, just because I'd feel guilty about living there so long and not noticing any of this. It'd be bad memories. While you're sitting in your living room, you're like, man, 17 people died next door and I never even got up for it.
Yeah.
You just feel horrific.
It'd be tough to not want to move. But I think some people would stay, man, especially if that's their family home. Nothing's chasing me out of my home.
Most people that love serial killers, they like stuff like that, living in haunted or areas that have bad, energy.
Let's go ahead and shift our attention to the UFO world. Now, we've got a lot of press these days, a lot of stories leaking about how UFO footage and the Pentagon's going, yeah, that's our footage. So here's the misconception I think that's going on. The UFO stuff that we're seeing, the government and the Pentagon, they're not claiming to know what that stuff is. They're not even commenting to say what it is. All they're saying is, yes, those videos are ours. That is our property. But as far as what you're seeing, we don't know too much about that. It's the pilots that are coming out saying, this is what we saw and this is the footage. They're the ones that released the footage, not the Pentagon, not the government. I think there is a little confusion on that just by reading some emails and talking with people. Has anyone seen the latest UFO footage they got out there, the one diving into the water?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if we're able to pull that up, Birdney or Denny's. It's the pilots are seeing it, and all of a sudden they go, it's going down to the water, and it shows it crashing into the water, which kind of backs up my own personal belief. I think a lot of UFOs and alien bullshit's aquatic in the water.
Is it Hawaii?
It might be. If you just, and I think that is the one. Yeah.
All right.
And if it's not, the chat room will let us know.
It's 4 months ago, and it's UFO seen crashing into ocean near Hawaii.
Should be more recent than that, but go ahead and play that one if that's legit.
There's also leaked video appears to show UFO near Navy ship off San Diego.
That might be it. That's the most recent one.
Yeah, it's the 1 week ago. All right, I'll pull it up.
San Diego. This is the one. This is the most recent that people are just doting over, Denny's. Thoughts on UFOs in the water, Beckett?
I think it makes sense. Birdney's more science based than I am, but I know from sailing and all that stuff that water simply is just a more dense version of air. So a lot of aerodynamics people consult with hydrodynamics people and vice versa. So it's very reasonable to believe a high technology, like the videos that you're referencing, the pilots say, hey, it's crazy. They're moving this quickly backwards and forwards. So if they have the technology to maneuver like that, then in theory, they should have the technology to be aquatic and air-based.
Birdney, you don't have to worry about the volume on it. You can just go about 30 seconds in and play it just to give the audience a little context of what we're talking about. Here we go. Yeah, so it goes straight down into the water, which there's so many accounts and stories of pilots and fishermen, sailors. And by the way, is anyone else shocked that Beckett sails?
I wonder if you see a lot of that stuff just because they're out and where you can see there's no light pollution. You have a full night sky. Mountains is probably another spot you get some good sightings. If you even just here in West Palm, if you go outside, it feels like it's daylight out, even at night, just the light pollution. So it's very tough to see anything here. But yeah, fishermen are a big account. And you wonder also too, is it them being out in the sea? There could be a whole magnitude of things causing them either, being out in the sea or, what do you call it? Mirages from the water. On a radar, though, I mean, that actually looked like a vessel or some sort of aircraft.
You bring up mirage in the water and all that, Beckett, you being a sailor. Do you ever see anything weird out there where you can't explain it? Does it really get that weird out there?
Yeah, some crazy people on these boats called cigarette boats blowing by me, not doing any etiquette on the water. That's pretty crazy. But no, I mean, remember in sailing, we're going all of like 8 miles per hour, like out there. I mean, it feels like we're flying, but no, like definitely nothing paranormal, I would say. But, I've done some diving and stuff. When you go under the water, it feels like a whole nother world, quite honestly, like almost alien.
Beckett, are you doing leg lifts?
No, I was untying my shoes. I just got home for the day, so I'm kind of getting cozy since we're on the weird and whatever. We're all getting together chatting.
I thought you were trying to get a quick workout in there. I apologize.
No.
I just think it's pretty cool. Right now, we're living in a time where the conversation of we don't know what the heck's up there. Yeah, UFOs makes you think since the 50s. All those reports aren't bullshit. People weren't crazy back then.
It is interesting. I will say, it's one thing for us on the podcast to have an open mind and talk about the possibility of other life and have the audience we have and be friends and have an open mind. But when you see that on all networks, MSNBC to Fox to everything, like across the mainstream media, actually being like, whoa, like, whatever your political ideology is, because if you're on the left, right, whatever, some people will just block certain things out. But literally, to your point, this is like going on and actually being released, not just on, open-minded, progressive, people's minds and stuff like that. This is actually on mainstream media and by the Pentagon and well-qualified pilots that this is like the real deal. Like that's when people need to like really start paying attention and asking a lot more questions.
Birdie, do we just fucking lose our minds? We know a ship is coming, Independence Day style. It's over New York, hovering, or it's over some country. How do we handle it? Because we did so well with the toilet paper. How do we do? How do we do with the UFOs? You're on mute, Birdie.
I said we're doomed between like the toilet paper and the gas thing. When no one even said like, oh, South Florida is gonna be affected by this gas thing, and we're dumb. Like we're doomed. I have no faith in humanity anymore.
Okay, I want to do a quick impromptu weird and whatever poll with the chat room and people listening, and send me your thoughts or put them down in the comment section. If UFOs legit were coming to Earth, do you think we as humans band together, or are we seriously completely fucked? I want to know how much everyone believes in our species. This is going to be very eye-opening for me. So please let me know your thoughts on that. I have a feeling I know how it's going to go, but I would like to be pleasantly surprised. Dennys, I don't think you think we bring it. We don't get it together, do we?
No. I think we would divide into a bunch of subgroups. I think there's going to be some people that go insane and they want aliens. They run up and rush it. They love it. I think there's going to be people that will not admit that there's aliens, even if there's proof of it. And then I think there's going to be people that are accepting that we do have aliens. And out of that percentage of people, I'm sure half of them are rocked by it and half of them can handle it. So I would say chaos.
Could you be able to handle aliens coming onto Earth? When I say coming onto Earth, I do not mean that dirty.
I mean, that would be a whole other category if you could mate with aliens. Like people get upset when people get married to another race or same-sex marriage. Imagine like alien human relationship.
Oh,
It would be a
I'm letting you
thing.
know right now. I am down with the alien. Oh, you can take me and you can probe me, baby.
You haven't even seen the aliens yet.
What's
Yeah.
that?
You haven't even seen them yet. How do you know if you're open to it?
What if it looks like Mac and me?
Oh, if it looks like Mac and me, that alone just got me such a bone.
Guys be-
Because there's a big spectrum of things that could happen. The aliens could look like Margot Robbie, or they could look like spiders. In the case if it's the latter, Denny's is out.
Oh, if we get spiders coming here, alien spiders, I'm not having that.
What if we got, they were 10-foot spiders, but they walked on their feet and they talked. They were able to immediately adapt every language possible on Earth so they could communicate. They could also communicate with your mind, but you still had to go to work every day and produce the KVJ show. Would you be able to still take that seriously if that was also going on?
I'd be making lots of jokes about, dictator spiders for sure. I mean, that would be worst case scenario if we had some sort of psychic spiders. But I mean, it could be the shape of anything. I would think it's more likely to be cephalopod, like squid or like crustaceanal, something like that. They possess almost alien qualities to begin with.
That's why some people think the crustaceans of the water are aliens of the earth.
Yeah, technically, you could say that lobsters are mermaids to crabs, right? Because I mean, they look like
Yamato. I get it.
I actually happen to be a lot more Pollyannish than you guys in the sense that if you guys were to say, what's the quickest way for us, quote unquote, for us all to get along? Russia, North Korea.
What's the quickest way for everybody right now to get along?
Right now, like A to B, quickest way for world peace. When I say world peace, everyone to get along. It would be an external threat. So when you're pledging in a fraternity or you're going through Hell Week in the military with a drill sergeant, that's basic psychology. They have an external threat, and all of the people in that group bond together. And all of a sudden, if we have an external threat, like an Independence Day Will Smith movie, maybe it's not 100%, but I, in my humble opinion, think it's the most likely that all of a sudden everyone gets along. Because all of a sudden, you hope North Korea has nukes. And Jay Bird will appreciate this analogy. I think I've maybe talked to Jay Bird, maybe off the podcast about this. Growing up playing.
Beckett, don't speak for me.
But wait, I think you'll agree with this. And what I mean is that growing up playing baseball, you had that rival team, that rival group. You had that guy that played for the other team. You hated him. Maybe because he was a pitcher or he was a great batter. Maybe it was part of his attitude. But when you got to the All-Star League and that same guy you hated was on your team, maybe you still thought he was a jerk or whatever, but you were stoked that he was on your All-Star team. And that was a weird dynamic as a kid to learn. I think it's actually a very maturing dynamic to learn. I think that's really important and really cool.
Yeah, to me, team sports and camaraderie and all that, that's always been kind of my thing. I love that. To your point, yes, I have had people that I didn't like, and then you guys are fighting the same mission and you become friends. That's the great story of the human spirit. I do agree. I do love all the commentary, gang. I think that's been great. I do want to get into another topic here, and unfortunately, Vicky's computer and internet it's shit the bed, so she will not be joining us. It's unfortunate because I had a lot of good stuff we'll get to next week with her. Soulmates. We've talked about soulmates before.
Yeah.
Do we believe in soulmates here, Dennys?
Yeah. What if you have no soul? I'm just kidding. Yes, we do believe in soulmates. And I think you can have multiple soulmates. I think you can have soulmates for different things, not necessarily just romantic interest.
Someone sent me, it was a very, very long email. And I basically kind of just off the cuff describing it. It was a a couple and the one broke up. The one guy left the one woman because he found his soulmate. That's what he had to leave because they met and that was the only one on the planet. And the soulmate spoke to him. And I'm gonna kind of call horseshit on that. I don't think there's just one soulmate on the planet. To Denny's point, you guys are my soulmates from a certain point of view. I think it's connection with people. You don't always have to try to get it in with for a soulmate. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's not all about sex, Beckett.
Yeah, pun intended.
I agree with what Denny's and you were saying. Like, I definitely think, like, I would consider Denny's wife, Jen, one of my soulmates in terms of, like, I knew the second I met her that she was going to be an important person in my life. And I do think that you could have multiple romantic soulmates. Like, I personally felt like I had met one of my soulmates and it didn't work out, but I do feel like I needed that strong of a connection with this person to be able to make the changes and learn the way I did. So in that sense, this person, she was like very much a soulmate to me.
So here's another, I love it. That's a good point. So could a soulmate just be a chapter or two in one's life? It's possibly the soulmate you needed at that time in your life. Is that possibly another way of looking at a soulmate in a smaller time frame, but still a soulmate nonetheless? No?
Yeah, and I feel like that person has prepared me now to be with the person who I'm supposed to be with, because I would have never matured and done those things if I had never met this other soulmate of mine. So I definitely think there's truth to it. You feel it. It's weird.
You hear these stories where someone, especially, and I'm more going with the movies, all right, or the TV show. And then I want to ask if this happens in real life. The guy will be telling a story or the woman will be telling a story. She walked in and I just knew right then and there I had to marry that girl. She had those green eyes like a leaf in the Canadian wind. I just knew. And we were married, 6 weeks later, and we lived. Does that really happen? Does love at first sight happen, or is that just a pipe dream in the movies, Denny's?
I think it does happen. Yeah, I think there's some people you just resonate with immediately. A lot of the friends that I've had that are more or less lifelong, we clicked almost just right away. Whatever it be, our upbringing be similar. We had similar references, whatever it be. All the people that I click with that I still talk to are all people that I would consider soulmates to an extent. And there's not many of them.
So I look back onto the people that I connect with very quickly, and like, to your point, you met them and for whatever reason you bonded with them, and that's a lot of it, for the most part, how I got with people that I agree would be in that soulmate category. And it's always, for me, I would say 90% of the time, there's something funny we both are sharing an opinion on. There's a laughing, kind of an upbeat, whatever that is. Laughter seems to be the connection for me personally. Something's funny that we both like. Does that sound familiar in your case?
Yeah. Also, I've come across the opposite. I've come across people that I'm pretty sure are my anti-soulmate. The minute I meet them, we just do not click. Everything about them, they hate about me. It's weird. I don't know what it is that humans put off or what it is, but I've come across both groups.
That is a great point. The anti-soulmate is awesome. Beckett, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just piggyback on that. Like, I've never heard that. You actually just dropped some knowledge. I've never ever thought of, because going back to physics, equal and opposite reaction. Like, if you believe in a soulmate, then you have to believe in an anti-soulmate, in my opinion. So I've never even thought about it. I think Denny's just blew my mind. We haven't even got to random facts yet. But
yeah, I to Denny's point, when I can feel it when I meet an anti-soulmate. I can feel it pretty fucking quick, man. It kind of hits me over the head and the heart at the same time.
You just know that you're not going to jive. You just know right away.
Yeah. I think with that said, it might be time for some
Denny's random facts.
All right. Well, Denny's will give a series of factoids. Birdney, our educator on the panel today, will grade him. If she loves the factoid, it's an A. And if she doesn't like it, she's going to give him an F. Denny's, the floor is yours.
So I love bringing these advancements in medicine to you guys because we just did things so odd back in the day. But ancient Egyptians used to use dead mice to ease their toothaches. So what they would do is they would mash the mouse into a paste and mix it with herbs, and you would rub it on things like measles, smallpox. They even claimed that it helped bedwetting. But unfortunately, we found out that this probably led to a lot of them dying because it increases infection and it doesn't help anything. But for a very long time, all the way up until even it was used as a wart remedy during the Elizabeth era of England. So, I mean, they thought there was something to rat paste, mashing up rats into a paste.
Only thing worse than warts is old-timey warts.
Amen.
Wow. That's Birdney.
Pretty gnarly.
I don't know. I give that a C because it's just like, I feel like how did we come up with anything like all medicines? At one point or another, people had to mash up something and like mix
trial
it with
and error
something else. Yeah. Like, so I feel like that's just everything else. Like that's just one of the things that they did that was not successful. I mean, do you ever think like, how did someone go, I'm going to pull a cow's udder and I'm going to drink from it? Like at one point or another, you had to do that.
Well, I always think about how do they find out you could lick a toad and get high? What other shit were they licking? Were they licking buttholes of cows? Were they licking what you know what I mean? All this stuff. How do you
It's trial and error, man. First guy that drank bleach, he was like, damn, this sucks. You know? I think that's just how it went, man. Back when we just, we had the pandemic and such, they have those cool masks they wear that looks like the bird beak. They thought that the plague was tied to breathing through your nose, so they would stuff it with flowers. It doesn't do anything except for smell like flowers. But for a long time, that's what the plague doctors would wear when they went down the streets of England. So in France.
It doesn't do anything other than just give you a really, really bad phobia of some fucking flowers.
Yeah. But there's another example of trial and error when they found out that did not work.
I mean, that's so funny. Because I know for a fact if all of a sudden some official came out and said, guys, you got to be sticking some tulips up your nose, people would be sticking tulips up their nose.
Yeah, I mean, if it came out and nobody knew better, then yes, absolutely. Until they realized it didn't do anything.
It's so true. So in the Tour de France, they used to smoke cigarettes when they were high in the Alps because they thought that it opened up their lungs to breathe better. It's wild. It's wild.
It's pretty good. Denny's, Beckett kind of dropped the factoid, and you had
That's
a
true.
shitty one to start it off with.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but it's like, okay, that and everything else on our planet, didn't they do some stupid stuff?
I'm sure.
Damn. So, Denny, I guess my next question for Denny's is, how does it feel to get so verbally smacked down from producer Birdney?
All right, I won't bring up any more rat paste. We'll move on to the next. Here, see if this one tickles your fancy. Originally, people used to wear nightgowns. Remember, if you watch any of the old-timey stuff, they always wear nightgowns. They had the night hat on. They come around with their lanterns. Well, the invention of pajamas, people didn't initially wear pajamas. In fact, pajamas were invented instead of nightgowns so that people could be prepared to run outside in public during World War I, during the air raids of England. That's why they invented pajamas, so you'd have a quick outfit you could sleep in and then immediately run out of your house in. The invention of pajamas.
That was the invention of pajamas?
Before that, it was nightgowns.
Wow, Birdney sounds kind of intrigued.
That is intriguing.
Yes.
I'll give that one an A. If it's true, I'll give it an A.
Big D, you're back, buddy.
Look at that.
I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah, originally people wore nightgowns. Women were, they didn't wear nighties. That didn't gain popularity until much later. But originally they wore full gowns. Everything was very concealing back then. But then once England started getting bombed and stuff, people were running outside unprepared for being outside, and so they started inventing pajamas that you could sleep in. It was basically clothes you could sleep in case you had to leave in case of emergency.
I always think that, like, if a fire alarm goes off in a hotel and I'm like washing my hair or something, like, do I rinse and like risk my life, or do I just run out naked with soap in my hair?
I think you got to run out, unfortunately.
I mean, that's very fortunate.
And
You have no ego if you die.
Yeah, that's
I mean, I have
true.
no dignity to begin with, but I'm just like, it's more for the other people. I mean, do I really want to scar them? I don't know.
So if you look it up, the original word is pajamas, but they changed it to pajamas over time. It just changed etymology-wise to American pajamas.
Why do you think they said pie?
Pajamas, P-Y, jamas. I have no idea why it was called that.
Becky, you know why they said pie, and I know where you're going. Hair pie. It covers the hair pie. I get it.
Gross.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Maybe.
All right. Okay. That's
All right. Let's see here.
A very vulgar thought from Becky.
Always.
Let's,
Anytime Vicky's not on, we get real dirty.
yes. Let's see here. I don't know. Let me know which one you guys think was a cooler name. Back in 1995, when the company Google was first starting and they had first developed their search engine, the software was called Back Rub because they felt like it was helping you out, like giving you a back rub. And it rolled as back rub for a long time until the guy saw the word Googleplex, which is a 1 followed by 100 zeros. So they changed the name to Google.
Numbers, right?
But we almost had back rub as our search engine.
Sounds better.
Back rub?
Back rub. It's what it was called for a majority of development until they found the word Googleplex.
The second option was reach around.
I know what.
I thought it was weird too. I looked into it because I was like, back rub. But they were saying because it's a helpful back rub, it's helping you out. It's just so back in the day, the internet didn't have search engines. If you wanted to search stuff, you had to be very
AOL.
specific with AOL. Yes, and then Google came and changed the entire world because it used keywords to find phrases and stuff, and then pull up all the shit for you.
Birdie, what do you give it?
I'll give it a B+ for back.
B for
rub.
back rub.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember the first thing they looked up on AOL?
Yes.
What was it?
Titties or something.
It was. I was 7, Beckett, and I was just looking for games. Like, I really loved Mad Libs, and I think the first time I was exposed to AOL was my like rich neighbor, and they logged in and they did Mad Libs. So I was like, once we got the internet, I was like, oh my god, now I can do Mad Libs. I thought it was so funny.
My rich friend had a computer, and that's how I knew about it. And the first thing I did was print up a picture of Gary Coleman from Different Stroke because it was one of my all-time favorite shows. I loved Gary Coleman growing up. I put it in a frame and hung it on my wall. That was the first thing I did on AOL. Beckett, what about you?
I mean, let's be honest. There's 3 guys out of 4 people on this panel. Most of us, given our age, we were testosterone-driven teenagers when the internet was going on. We were Googling adult content, it wasn't existing. We were looking up adult content.
Dog,
What did you find back in the day is the question.
It used to take forever.
Oh yeah. I used to come back for the picture.
Yeah, well, it would load like this.
From top to bottom.
We used to load. My friend's mom would be walking over and we'd be like trying to like click it, you know? So funny. We only had one computer back then in the middle of the entire house.
That's right.
I didn't. The computers weren't going down. So when I was 16 and we didn't have that kind of money. So all the porn I got was either lingerie magazines that came in, the mail like a Sears, or you'd have to that one porn tape everybody would share that you'd grab and then you have to watch it for 10 minutes when your parents were gone. I didn't have money like that.
Or I'm calling myself out, that one channel like Skinamax that wasn't really scrambled in the best way. And you're like, oh, I saw a boob.
Yeah, Skinamax. I had like 19 people living at my house. It was tough.
Kids have it so easy today. We had to struggle.
Too easy.
You're right.
Oh, geez.
Sorry.
It used to be hard.
I had to go for adult content uphill both ways back then.
We used to pull, hey,
Seriously.
misters. Be like, hey, mister.
We had to work harder to get it back then. And I think it was just a little bit more special.
Yeah, you appreciate it more. I mean, and all joking aside, that is like a really great point, is that when it doesn't come as easy, like that's a psychological fact.
I don't bump.
Yeah, it's
going there. I love it. But
you appreciated it.
Yeah, exactly. You appreciate it way, way, way more in that scenario, and that messes when it. They say easy money, easy go. So when you work really hard for the money, like you save it more. So I think that's changed with sexuality, promiscuity. Like if it's easy to get, then I think people don't really value it as much. That's another interesting point.
You can do way too much porn. There's so many studies out there, and I just know personal stories of people that have delved way too much into porn where they can't even they can't have regular sex anymore. They can't even get hard because they're so numb from all the porn that they've watched. Now that's an extreme case. I know I'll get an email of someone saying you're being so over the top, but you can too much of anything can be detrimental. All right, Dennys, as you were.
Well, now you got people now edging and stuff. There's all these new variations to using porn. It used to be just, you go wank and then move on with your life.
Porn was a 3-minute jerking off or masturbating or whatever was a 3-minute thing. It's turned into an hour-and-a-half event.
Well, now it's a whole evening.
But
I mean, COVID. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
We're stuck at home. What do you want?
Certainly didn't help.
You're right, Birdie. It makes a great point.
Well, I guess we'll keep it on this since we're talking about sex here. What do you guys think about this? Avocados are named after reproductive organs. The indigenous people of Mexico and Central America used the word ahucado, which means testicles. When they started pitching it to the Americas, nobody wanted it, people that were bilingual. So they changed the name to alligator pears to see if that caught on. And that one didn't either. So then they just used the avocado. And a lot of people just forgot that it means testicles. But it's a direct translation to testicles in their language.
I knew that. Did you know that orchids also mean testicles?
No, I did not.
There's so many testicles out there.
It makes sense because plants are giant testicles if you think about it. We stick our nose in them, but I mean, technically, they're just
That's your first go-to.
They're just giant testicles or giant labias. I don't know what you call it.
Vulvas.
Vulvas. There you go.
They're just giant Yeah, you stick your face in them.
Bees are just going around pollinating them like crazy.
Going around.
I mean,
orchids.
I'll give it.
I mean, is that a fact? Was that a rant? What was that?
I give it a B- because I felt like that was a lot of people knew that, but it's still interesting.
All right, Big Z, give us one more that's going to really knock our dick in the dirt.
Your avocado in someone's nose.
I love it.
Give us one early. Smack that fruit sack in our face.
Let's see. Here's just awareness. We talk about internet. The ability to transfer information real quick has made us all real smart dicks. But before then, nobody knew anything. So you just believed what you were told. But Europeans were scared of eating tomatoes when they first were introduced forever. They could never get tomatoes to work. Scholars think they brought the seeds in 1519 with the intent of the fruit being used to design and make gardens more ornamental. But by the 1700s, aristocrats started eating them, and they were convinced that the fruits were poison. But the misconception was they all used pewter plates, and from the acidity of the tomatoes in there was poisoning everybody. So they thought it was the tomatoes, but it was actually the pewter plates that were killing them. But it made everybody scared of tomatoes for a long time.
Tomatoes also are made of, I'm forgetting the compound, but the people are more prone to be allergic to tomatoes too. So I'm pretty sure that would push the stereotype as well, because people actually get sick eating tomatoes. Yeah. You can be deathly allergic.
Funny thing too is the doctors are like, yeah, this is tomato death. But when looked upon later, it was actually lead poisoning that killed them. So they thought that was tomato death.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that.
Does anybody here, and I'm sure nobody here or in the chat room or listening, remembers a movie called Attack of the Killer Tomatoes? And it had a theme song that went, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Yes.
They did a
You guys
cartoon.
do? Yes, I'm so happy.
They made a horror movie of it, and then they made a kids' TV show cartoon out of it. And I was like, where was the connection on that?
Yeah. I remember the
What
kid.
an odd concept.
I couldn't believe it.
Knocking people off. How weird is that?
I thought the same exact thing. Kids show. I'm gonna pull it up here.
Another weird movie on that same kind of vein that some of you might have heard of. It's called Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yeah.
And it's such a bizarre movie. I believe from the late 80s, maybe late 80s probably. And Beckett, you'd have to smoke a lot of weed to really kind of get in that zone. These clowns basically come from pieces of popcorn. Yeah, here we go. Here's Attack of the Killer Tomato.
They made a cartoon out of this that aired on Saturday mornings.
Wait, who's sharing the screen? Is this Birdney?
Oh, I just shared it real quick off YouTube.
So what's Sex Ed Podcast? What are you downloading there on your bottom of your screen, dude?
So let me just set this up.
Oh,
If you are listening and not watching right now, Dennys is playing a section of the cartoon Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
It was a quality show. I actually think I watched it a little bit.
I watched it. I had the action figure. I couldn't believe it that they made action figures. But yeah, that sex ad is the ad that plays in the middle of the After the Show podcast on KVJ. I had to edit it.
Hot.
Yeah, we have sex ads now, Beckett.
Yeah, they do in the middle of the podcast.
Killer Tomatoes should have done some merch. They should have done some ketchup bottles or something. They would have sold like hotcakes.
Yeah, it was weird. There was in the 80s, there was a pride that came with making these really cool toys, making really cool themed universes for shows and such. And then when the heyday went away, I feel like they took all those same exact ideas and in the 90s recycled them as kids things. And it didn't necessarily make, because Beetlejuice, I mean, that's a comedy. It's kind of like it's kind of a quirky comedy. It's kind of even layered in a little bit of I guess you could say grim fairy tales type stuff. But that movie became a kid's show after, where him and Lydia were friends. And I thought that was so odd because that's nothing of the premise of the movie. I don't know why they did that, but I think they were just trying to rehash old ideas from the 80s into the 90s.
Yeah, that seems to be a theme that everyone's doing, no matter what decade you're in, especially in modern times. I do want to end on something a little deep. Get your guys' thoughts on this, and the chat room as well. Someone wanting to know, is everything planned out for us as human beings, or is it a hybrid of things being planned out? And I mean, I want to know this too. I believe in free will. I believe we kind of make our own destiny, but I also think certain things can be placed in front of us, almost kind of like signs or symbols. I think we're on autopilot a lot as a species. I think we miss certain signs in our lives. I know I have personally. I know that if I'm on autopilot in my life, there's certain things that are kind of hitting me over the head or kind of gnawing at my soul that I could ignore. So I believe that there's a bit of both, but I really do kind of am more of a believer of, yes, there's a lot of free will on what you do. And then it goes out into the universe and, there's chances that happen and whatnot. What are your thoughts on that, Dennys? Or I'm sorry, let's go with Birdney.
It's something I've definitely thought a lot about. Like, I like to believe that there's free will and free choice, but then I wonder if it's just the perception of it. It's kind of like if you believe in a deity or a God or some higher power in the universe that's all knowing, then that person can make you do whatever you want. So like if I give you two choices of ice cream, for example, and I have your favorite ice cream out in front of you and your least favorite, I know you're going to go for your favorite. And in your mind, you're like, I chose that. That's my free will. But behind the scenes, I knew you would choose that. So is it really you like having free will, or is it just the perception of it because I knew that? So if you're like an all-powerful being that knows everything or whatever it may be that you believe in, like you could basically use that knowledge to your advantage for everything and have a cause and effect. So I honestly don't, some days I believe in free will because I'm like, that would suck if that was predestined. But other days I'm like, this was meant to happen. So I kind of go back and forth between the two.
People always think I'm being a smart ass when I say this. But for example, would a God or a creator know I'm about to do this, snap my fingers and dance like this? Would they know I'm going to do that seconds before I was going to do that?
I think so, because I feel like if there was a survey that someone asked me in Denny's and they're like, what is Jason most likely going to do if I say this? And there was 4 options. I feel like we would be able to be like, oh, he's definitely going to do this or something like that. And we're just your friends.
There's options at that point. There's no options here. I just did that out of the blue. I understand what the 4 options. I get you guys would nail that, but you guys wouldn't be able to predict something out of the blue possibly.
But if I were deity, would you, like, if I know everything and I have all that knowledge in the universe, would I be able to? I don't know.
Or if you were the deity, what if you made it and then you go, this is the game, and I let the game play out the way the game plays out?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely philosophies like that. I honestly go between the two because some days I'm like, yay, this is destiny. And other days I'm like, oh, I hope this is not destiny. That would really suck. I believe in free will. So I don't.
To your point, yeah, there are days where I feel very strong that there's this spirit and afterlife, and then there's times where I question it greatly. That's why I do like things that happen with ghost activity. I feel like that's a sign that there's something after this, which gives me kind of hope. A lot of people think ghosts are scary, or I don't want ghosts. But for me, having a spirit around, whether it be scary or not, shows me that, hey, there is something else. Denny's free will versus.
So I struggle. I'm glad to see everybody else struggles with it, but I constantly battle whether free will is real or not. I mean, I think that's just the condition, but I guess I used to be very staunch against free will. I used to think there was no such thing, but as I've gotten older, I kind of think the opposite weirdly now. I feel if there really was an all-knowing being, first off, would he concern himself with such, there's millions of people on this planet. It'd be impossible to keep track. And then if you're just being that selfish and saying just this planet, I imagine they govern all sorts of life, all sorts of planets. But just why, if they're all knowing and they know everything that's going to happen, then what's the purpose of it happening? If it's all just going to lay out as if it's already been written and we're just acting out the script, what is the purpose of that? If it's going to end how it's supposed to end and it's foretold that it's going to be, I feel like the most I can accept as far as what would you call it, pre-manifest destination or whatever, what I would say is it would steer you in a route to set you up for this to be a future, but it doesn't necessarily have to be it. I think things can maybe steer you towards a direction, but not necessarily it's written in stone.
That's where I'm more at. There's a bit of maybe both, kind of like science and religion. Sometimes why people always go, it's got to be this or that. Well, why can't there be a little bit of both? And you mix it together and see, why does it have to be one or the other? Or why does it have to be just one of those two? Why can't there be a third factor involved there? Beckett, final thoughts here.
You hit the nail on the head. A lot of different debates. People always think it's binary. It's black or white. It's this or that, and they don't ever put any nuance to the answer. I tend to go where Dennys has progressed in the sense that I'm less that everything's predestined and everything's free will. I mean, I have gone through phases of life in terms of being in shape or being productive in business, and they're all my own personal choices. And even in the moment and retrospectively, I can go back and sure, there's definitely external factors that aren't my doing. But if I had a good month, a good year in sales and work or dating or in health, it's because I decided, quite frankly, to wake up and go to the gym. And there wasn't anything external that decided for me to do that. And I can look back on it, I'm like, hey, I'm in great shape. I made a conscious decision to not eat that hamburger, drink that beer, and do those things. So you could make a case that something external is causing that motivation or whatever. But from what I know and the facts that I have experienced, it's all free will. It's all free will. And it happens because I make it happen for the most part.
Really, really great stuff, guys. I love all the perspectives. Such great fun talking with you all. Chat room, thank you guys for joining us and being here for the Weird Whatever podcast. It's a weird place out there, y'all. It's a crazy world, but we live here. Is that not the truth?
That is the truth. It seems to be getting better though, doesn't it? Like every time, like our Wi-Fi connection's better. We're all vaccinated for the most part. Where everything's open up. Mask restrictions are going down. I feel like we're on the up.
Just
At least here.
a couple holes through Beckett's positivity. I have not been vaccinated yet. We lost Vicky on our internet connection.
Sure.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Sure.
I'm totally kidding. I'm messing with you, Beckett. All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. We love you all. And
Bigfoot is real.